From the moment of our birth, we have been studying. When we first open our eyes to see our parents looking down at us, we study their faces and we remember them. When we listen to our parents speak, we study the sounds that they make and we learn to speak ourselves. Even when our uncle says a dirty joke, we study that, and in some cases, we repeat it. However, in my case, it wasn't so much a dirty joke as it was a horror story that my uncle told me. When I was 8 years old, he sat me down to tell me about a nightmare he had back from his high school days. Now, when I was 8 years old, the very premise of high school scared me. And to think that something happened there, that my now 40-year-old uncle was still afraid of it, was enough to rock me to my very core. In his nightmare, my uncle would describe himself going into class just like any other day, and he would see his teacher passing out a piece of paper. As soon as the teacher reached him, he would realize, as though a brick hit him to the face, that he had a test that day, and he hadn't studied for it. The sense of dread he described was so immense that 8-year-old me couldn't really comprehend it. What was so scary about not studying for a test? 8-year-old me was expecting something similar to a shark eating him alive or dinosaurs trying to trample him. However, that wasn't the case, and as I've gotten older, I feel like I've been able to understand that sense of dread more and more. And it's made me question, why is this the case? Why is studying for tests, why is taking exams such a stressful thing to do? Why is it comparable to sharks eating you alive or crawling through tight spaces? And is there a way to make this process any more bearable? Well, interestingly, there's a lot of research that's been done on this topic. Ways to make studying more time efficient, more effective, and even make you feel more confident when going into the test. I've become pretty knowledgeable on this topic because I decided that this year I would be taking 6 AP courses. For those of you who don't know what that means, it's a lot of work. And in order to deal with that increased workload, I studied studying techniques over the summer to make sure I wouldn't be locked up in my room trying to keep my grades up all year. And so let me tell you what's the most important thing about studying. One of the most important things that showed up in my research was that you have to put in the effort. It's not as simple as this one neat trick that teachers hate. You need to put in the effort. It's comparable to working out. If you don't feel completely drained by the end of your session, then you're not going to gain the knowledge you need to pass the test, to do well on the exam. But effort means nothing if you don't have the right technique, which is why active listening is so important. Many of us already know what active listening is. It's stuff we already do, like taking notes and asking questions. However, you can also take it deeper by taking Cornell notes or creating mind maps. But the thing about taking notes is I'm not very reliable at it. I once managed to fail a test because the notes I took made so many minor incorrect assumptions that I took as complete fact. So it took me down a rabbit hole of other techniques that eventually led me to ChatGPT. Now, we already know what ChatGPT is. It's this AI that's been taking the world by storm since 2021, and it looks to be Google on steroids. And many of us already use it for menial tasks like sending emails or generating images. However, what most of us don't know is that it is an adept tutor and can be used as a way to superpower already existing techniques into something that turns studying into a much less laborious task. One such technique that meshes really well with ChatGPT is called the Feynman technique. What is the Feynman technique? Well, it was this technique that was created by physicist Richard Feynman, who was also dubbed the Great Explainer because of how well he could explain things. And accordingly, his technique requires you to teach your subject to someone who's never heard of your subject in their life. For example, let's say you wanted to teach what a cell was in AP biology to someone who doesn't know what a cell is, or for that matter, what biology is. You'd have to use very, very simple words. For example, you could say that the cell is the smallest building block of all living things. In doing that, it helps you understand your topic more, and it helps you teach the person a lot more. But how does it mesh with ChatGPT? Well, let me give you an example of a really tough topic that the Feynman technique alone couldn't quite solve, which was kinematics in physics. It was a really tough topic, and no matter how much I read the textbook, how many videos I watched, I just couldn't wrap my head around the topic enough so that I could create a simplified explanation. So what I did was I created a simplified explanation that I knew was wrong, and then I put it into ChatGPT so that it could tell me where I could improve and where I was already correct. I went back and forth with ChatGPT on this, trying to create the perfect explanation. And after the better half of an hour, I felt completely confident that I could both teach the subject to others and ace the test. However, just as important as being able to absorb what's put in front of you, you need to know what you need to put in front of you. That's what brings me to the Dunning-Kruger effect. So have you ever felt so confident that you'll do well on a test, but then when you go to take it, you find that you knew absolutely nothing on it? That's what it's like. That's what it's like to be on the tip of Mount Stupid. And then the test throws you off that cliff. To give a more universal example, let's say you think you're the best chef in the world, because the grilled cheese you make is loved by everyone. However, you then go into a gourmet kitchen and announce yourself as such. And then Gordon Ramsay shows up and subsequently calls you an idiot sandwich for thinking that being able to make one grilled cheese sandwich is what makes you a great chef. And this actually reminded me of a quote that was said many, many years ago by Socrates. And it was that the only true wisdom is knowing that you know nothing. When I first heard this quote, it was complete gibberish to me. Like, what could this possibly mean? However, as I was able to contextualize it within the Dunning-Kruger effect, the concept of knowing nothing began to make more sense to me. And now, I exercise that wisdom whenever I'm about to study. I make sure I make a roadmap of all the topics and skills that I need to practice. I make sure I know what I don't know. And in doing this, I felt complete confidence that I would be able to do well on the test. And for the final technique that's required to have a robust study routine, it's to allow yourself to be curious and ask questions. Even if those questions aren't necessarily related to the subject you're learning, or if they're too advanced compared to what's going to be on the test, it's still important to research them. For example, I would do this all the time in 10th grade in AP Biology. I would go through the textbook and research every single term and process within it using ChatGPT as well as Google. And it was incredibly helpful to me. The confidence I gained in those tests was simply invaluable. And while it sounds like it took me forever to do this, it actually reduced the amount of time I spent reading through the textbook, because I was able to go from start to finish without having to reread anything. Those in-depth connections that are created by allowing yourself to ask questions to your curiosity's will was just invaluable, and it was different. So that's pretty much it. That's everything I have to tell you about what I know about studying. And I want you guys to take away from this that you don't have to use my routine. There are many different techniques and routines you can use. However, what I want you guys to know most of all is that studying isn't something that has to be dreadful. It's a skill that you can learn and improve. And maybe one day you'll see it from the same perspective as me and Albert Einstein, which is that education is not the learning of facts, but the training of mind to think. Thank you.